Hey everybody, my name is Daryl and this is Dion.
Hello.
And welcome to fuck. Welcome to Where We Stand, a series where we talk about the games we've recently played and discuss how much they may or may not have affected our enjoyment. That was a weird way to phrase it, but you got my point. Today we're talking about Ghost of Tsushima, which is available on the PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5. Now that we're queued up and ready to go, let's get started, starting with the story.
All right, so first I'm just give you a quick overview of the game's story. In Ghost of Tsushima, you play as Jin Sakai, a lord in the land of Tsushima and one of the last surviving samurai after the defeat of Kamada Beach against the Mongols. After being saved by a thief named Yuna, Jin must change up his tactics and possibly turn his back on the ways of the samurai to free his land and his uncle, but at what cost? In Ghost of Tsushima, we're really transported to this land where we're put into a story of survival in the eyes of a samurai, and you learn kind of what that means. I just want to go through quickly some of the main points that you see and how we kind of react to that. So first, in the first battle, first thing that happens is Kamada Beach, right?
Yes.
So you have that battle on Kamada Beach. They actually let you have that battle, by the way, which is really cool. And you're out, and it's all these people running. My PS4 was chugging the whole time. I swear I got like 20 FPS. But anyway,
Same.
You get to play through it. It's slow and chuggy, but it wins the race eventually, and get through the fight, which it's really cool. It makes like an easy fight. You got to kill things really quickly.
It serves as your tutorial.
Right, it serves as your tutorial. Tells you how to play the game. Well, kind of.
Sort of.
Some of the early stuff, and then you kind of fall out. You guys lose the battle, and then you're transported, and you meet Yuna, who we mentioned before. Who kind of introduces you to the way of the ghost.
And initially, your goal at the beginning portion of the game, for all of Act 1, you're gathering allies to save your uncle, who is kidnapped at Komoda Beach. Mm-hmm. You think Jin originally thinks he's dead, but really he was kidnapped by, well, he thinks he might be dead. He doesn't know at the time. He just sees his uncle, Lord Shimura, getting dragged off, and then he passes out. And that's when Yuna comes to get him. Now, going to these main points, again, your main goal is to rescue Lord Shimura so that you can drive the Mongol force out of Tsushima. But to do so, that means possibly dishonoring him in every way possible. If you want to take it from there, Dion.
Yeah, so it may seem like, this whole first section where you're just gathering allies, honestly, this first section wasn't that exciting for me. Like, the story's just real simple at this point because you're like, okay, I just gotta rescue my uncle. That is like the main thing, and then the fact that you're killing people from behind, which is not the honorable way. It's not how you were raised. But Yuna teaches you this so you can survive, and you find out that you really need to do this to survive and to rescue Lord Shimura. There was no way you could face them head on and win at this point. So that's why you do that. And then as you're getting to rescue your uncle, you start making these different groups of people, and one of your old friends, Ruzo from the Straw Hats group, he's the leader.
He's a big One Piece fan.
Big fan, by the way. Love the name. I love it. But he was supposed to come with you on the battle to rescue Lord Shimura, and you find out that he betrays you, and you fight him at that point, which is a big betrayal because this is the point where you're like, everything's going well. I didn't see it coming at all that he was going to betray me. He had some kind of hints, but I just didn't see it coming. I thought it was going to be simple. You get him back, get Lord Shimura back, and you keep moving.
All the hints were in his character design, specifically his messy hair and the fact that he's a Ronin. He's essentially a mercenary. So I'm not sure if that's what Ronin actually means, but his role essentially, he hunts bounties, and the Mongol leader, dang it, what's his name? We'll get into characters later, but I'm slipping up on his name. Oh, Kotan Khan. He puts a bounty on Jin Sakai's head, and Ryuzo sees it as an opportunity to claim the bounty, despite the fact that he has to go against his old friend and against his essentially where he was born and raised, so that he can take care of his own people, his Straw Hats group. Obviously, you take him down there the first time you fight him. You don't kill him, not yet, but we'll get into more of that later. For now, I can go into a bit more detail about the other characters in that story portion that you meet. You meet Sensei Ishikawa, who's you either love or you hate. I love them.
Hate. I hated them. What can I say?
You meet Masako and you meet Yuna's brother Taka, and you also meet Kenji. Those are the main group. That's the main group you meet in that beginning portion. You're essentially trying to meet them. Well, actually, let's rephrase that. You meet them first, and then you want to get them to join you, but first you have to complete one of their tales and whatnot, and that starts their own little side stories that we'll get into later. That really fleshes them out. But once you're ready and prepared to go storm the castle where Lord Shimura is held, you have to use any techniques that you've learned along the way to successfully infiltrate it. Of course, you're still approaching it from a samurai's perspective, more or less, because at this point in the story, Jin is still working off the mindset of, I'm still a samurai, but I'm making an exception here to do what I can. So eventually, you do rescue Lord Shimura. And he does know the things you've done because Kotan Khan told him about the events and things that you've done in, when you were on your way to come and get Lord Shimura. Now, at this point, though, Lord Shimura looks at you side-eyed a little bit. It's like, I don't like that you've been doing this. You should be behaving like a samurai instead of doing the tactics of a thief, as he likes to call it. But he lets it slide a little bit, so since he's straight from the he phrased it as, you strayed from the path a bit, but you did what you had to do to get me. But now we do this as samurai. Now that I'm here.
Yep, definitely. He definitely takes the time to let you know that, hey, we're gonna do it this way. And as you can imagine, that doesn't necessarily work. So as we move into the next half of the game, which is our Act 2, which is a big act in the game, I would say.
Pretty huge.
This kind of continues pretty similarly, right? So you first you're going to arrive at Lord Shimura, and you're going to do some missions for him, which are your main quests. But then you're going to be doing the missions for those that you have met, and you even get a chance to meet some of the other characters that are involved in the experience. So here you really get to... It's kind of the same, right? It's kind of that similar type of gameplay, type of story, meeting these characters. But, things start to get a little bit more out of hand as you start doing these missions, and he's seeing how you're acting as a ghost.
Yes. And take it from someone who was trying to push the samurai route as much as I could. There are points where where the game forces you to be the ghost. I.e., one of the earliest sections is when you're not taking back the fort. When you're escorting Lord Shimura's friend, the guy he knows from the underground, essentially, who's a crook, really. And you have to use one of these, I forgot what you call them, but they shoot blazing arrows. And when you have to shoot those at the ships, and Sakai is the one who, says, oh, we need to do this. And Shimura's not a big fan of it, but he allows it there because it's the only way. But from there, he's dead set on keeping Jin on the straight and narrow. I don't know who Jim is, but there you go.
Exactly. And so then this kind of leads up to Castle Shimura as you go and fight for that. So this is a huge battle, and you quickly find out that it's not going to work out doing this the samurai way. At first, you kind of do the samurai way and try to beat them back, and you're semi-successful. You do beat them back. You lose a lot of men, but this is where things got real interesting. You're like, well, we can't get in there. They have like these explosives in the bridge.
They blow up the bridge.
One way in. It's going to be a massacre if we do it. And so what you decide to do is get a little tactful and go under the bridge and use your ghost tactics to poison their army, and you completely take it by yourself, which is insane, by the way.
It's pretty brutal, actually. I almost felt sorry for some of those Mongols because I'm like, that looks painful. During this point, and this is where it was a little unexpected for me, I expected to have to fight and kill Ryuzo after or after we retake Castle Shimura. Towards Act 3, you kill. I expected you kill Kotan Khan, and now you have to kill your friend. But no, that's not how it played out. You fight Ryuzo there, and it's a fight to the death. Ryuzo tries to surrender when he realizes that Kotankan is going way too far with this. There's nothing in it for him anymore. And because Ryuzo betrayed you, the Straw Hats also betray you, so you had to kill all the Straw Hats. So there's literally nothing else for Ryuzo. So all Sakai is saying is surrender, Ryuzo. Surrender, because otherwise we are going to have to fight. And Ryuzo's not willing to, and Jin's not willing to back down, so you do end up killing Ryuzo there. And an
epic fight.
Essentially, it was actually. I'll get into the gameplay bit later when we get there, but for me it's pretty easy, pretty straightforward because I literally didn't give him a chance to attack me. After that, when you leave the castle, because essentially the plan that led to the poisoning was, according to Lord Shimura, was to essentially repair the bridge and then bombard straight forward. Because I'll give you a sneak peek now. One of the main game mechanics for a samurai is to do a standoff. Essentially, you walk up and they're like, "What up? Who wants to fight me?" That's essentially what he was planning, and that got most of their men killed earlier when the Mongol decided to bomb the bridge. So that's when Jin decides, like Dion mentioned, to sneak in the dead of night and get in there, which of course Lord Shimura is not happy about. So you do that, you poison them, you fight Ryuzo. Now you have to confront Lord Shimura, who up to this point was considering Jin as an adoptive son, because Jin was only under Shimura's wing because his father was killed when he was young. And that's one of the things that's traumatic for Jin initially, why he upholds being a samurai so strongly, because he wanted the strength to be able to protect people like he couldn't protect his father. Kind of like the whole, Peter Parker wasn't there to save Uncle Ben for petty reasons that he knew were petty, and then Uncle Ben died. Mm-hmm. So now he's pushing that forward for himself. So it's more or less the same thing with Jin. So at this point, it's really heart-wrenching because you can see the pain. They're really good at their facial animations in this game, by the way. You can see the pain in Lord Shimura's face because essentially he has to call it like it is. He wants Jin to renounce the way of the ghost, a folklore tale that Yuna brought up to keep people from being scared of Jin as if he's just some monster or demon and whatnot. This was just her way of coming up with a story that would still paint Jin in a good light, but show that he's not meant to be fucked with, essentially. Forgive my French. So instead of throwing Yuna under the bus and casting the ghost aside, Jin decides, no, I'm a ghost. That's it, Uncle. At this point, Jin is arrested. Mm-hmm. And this leads to Act 3.
Act 3. Okay, so you've been through, the main parts of the game. This is the shortest act of the game by far.
Smallest too.
This is where you escape from jail, right? You get rescued by one of your companions.
Good old Kenji.
Good old Kenji rescues you. You escape, and then you go to get your allies. After losing your horse, of course, which was
they killed my horse.
A little gut wrenching because after every little story beat or every little quest, you have these little moments with your horse, and you really build that relationship just through these little cutscenes.
You can name your horse.
You can name them.
They killed Sora.
You love him. I chose that name too. You love him, and then he just dies, and it's a little heart wrenching. You're kind of on your own, and you're out there, and you see all these people. You're trying to sneak around, so they really key on this part as being like a low point or just the sadness of everything that happened. So then you work with Yuna to kind of get away for your teammates to get to the north, because that's where you are now. So you're on the north of the map. So you find a way to get your teammates north, and you kind of work together with your team to find a way to make a final play at the Khan. Now, there is a little nuance to this, right? So you plan to fight the Khan, but you are like, okay, you have the coolest mission ever, by the way. I want to say this. I love this mission. So you want to get Lord Shimura to help you. So you actually go back to his castle. You slip all the way through it and climb all the way to the top, which is it's just so cool. It's such an amazing mission. I just really love it. Feel like a ninja. I really like that feel. I'm not gonna lie to you. It's amazing. But you got to sneak all the way through. You leave him a message, and he tries, and he sees this message. He's like, "Holy crap, this guy's here!" But then he's like saying, "Oh, we're gonna fight." And then you go to the final battle, which was, it was pretty cool. You go to the final battle, you start the war, you fight all the way through, and then, to your amazement, as expected, Lord Shimura shows up towards the end to kind of push through while you focus on getting to the Khan, who is your final boss fight of this area. Not the end of the game, but the final boss fight of this area, who I think is a pretty good boss fight. Maybe talk about that a little bit in gameplay. A little difficult, but it was a cool fight. And you get to fight him, and then this is not the end of the game. Daryl, why don't you tell us how this moves on?
I will in a moment, but first I want to point out one important fact. After you poisoned everyone, or all the Mongols in Castle Shimura, you find out the Mongols learned how to make your poison. So they started poisoning other people, and Jin sees this, and that's probably the one of the many moments in the game where you see your repercussions of being the ghost. It's kind of like, I'm going with superheroes again. It's kind of like the superhero thing. There were no supervillains until they were superheroes. So because things were as they were, things they were losing, but they were manageable. They were trying to fight back. Jin starts applying more ghost tactics and getting more creative. Now the enemy's getting more creative, which, quick gameplay thing at that point, getting shot with an arrow freaking sucked at that point because they were poison tipped. So they would just dot your health down, and your vision would get blurry and all that, and you have to heal. It was annoying. It was cool. It added a different element to the fight, or to combat, but still. Anyway, the ending portion is the roughest part. Because for me, Koton Khan was a disappointing boss. Because I don't know, he didn't feel like the final boss. And upon the actual ending of the game, you see why. Your final boss is your uncle, because he's been tasked by the shogun to eliminate you, who is a traitor to the samurai and essentially Shimura, for incorporating those tactics that are not honorful. Honorful, I don't think is a word. I don't know. Don't care right now. But neither of them want to do it. You can see it. You have to write one last haiku. That's another gameplay thing we'll get into later. You have to write one last haiku, and it's heart-wrenching because you can see Lord Shimura doesn't want to do it. And you fight, and you're given one choice. Well, two choices, sorry. You're given two choices, but they're both bittersweet. And let me just say, I wasn't surprised that there was a choice that had to be made here, because much like Sucker Punch's last major titles, this was a game developed by Sucker Punch, by the way, Infamous, Infamous 2, Infamous Second Son, there's always, in their recent titles and whatnot, there's always been a decision you had to make. Differences here, you don't have to make a decision until the end, because everything else doesn't really matter up to this point. So you have two choices at this point now. You either kill Lord Shimura and do it in a way that's like honorable, because he's essentially asking you that if there's any shred of honor left in you, kill me and give me a warrior's death. And the other one is the ghost option, where you let him live and discard, as other people I've seen put it, discard what's left of that samurai honor by letting him live and letting him live in that defeat. I personally chose to kill him because I wanted to, how I put this, I wanted him to retain his honor, and I wanted to show him that the samurai that he taught and whatnot was still in Jin. And those lines when Lord Shimura, when Jin essentially tells him that, yes, I will kill you, etc. And his last words to Lord Shimura are, "Goodbye, father." And Lord Shimura's to him is, "Thank you, my son." Showing like a resolution there between them. And it's heart-wrenching. Because after Jin betrayed him, he essentially lost him as a son and whatnot. And the only reason the scene is a lot more heart-wrenching is that before this, leading up to that part, you are, I won't say you're hanging out with Lord Shimura, but he calls you out there, and essentially you go through a slight trip down memory lane, and you do talk to him. It's kind of awkward, and he takes you to where the Sakai clan, where his father was buried, and that's where you fight him. Dion, which option did you choose?
I'm happy you asked, because I completely disagree with your decision.
That's completely fine. I was hoping you would. It makes for good discussion.
I decided to not kill him, and there is reasons why.
Mm-hmm.
I think the big bearing on my decision after going through this whole experience was that he was still old enough to start another family and get a new son, and I think that was the best decision. And the ending, what it kind of results in, is him saying, "Well, now you are the rogue, and you will be hunted for the rest of your life."
Yeah.
Which happens anyway.
Which
that's how it says. You don't have that whole thing, but also for the honorable death, he couldn't really you honored me and you're honorable still, but then you're dead. So then he just loses that honor, and he doesn't really remember. I mean, he's gone. It's just like it's kind of useless. It's not really important. And I think the idea for me was the character saying, you know what, this whole honorable thing as a samurai is what got us in this mess in the first place. And if we had stood by and fought the way we needed to win, we would have had no issues. We need to stop this from happening again. So that's why I chose the other ending, and I think it fits a little closer to what I've expected from the game. But either way, honestly, I think both endings have extreme payoff. I didn't know that. This is the first time I'm hearing the other ending, which is kind of cool. Mm-hmm. But it seems like they both have really cool payoff and really are really impactful. And I think that's what makes this game so strong. Why it's got so many awards. Why it's got Game of the Year. Well, this is One Piece. There's so many other things to talk about.
Well, it was nominated for Game of the Year. It lost to Last of Us Part 2.
Yeah. Well, I didn't play that game. And that's all I'll say. So now we should just give our thoughts on the story overall. I think, the story ranges. At the beginning it's a little, lackluster, but then I think it gets really good by the end. I think it really encapsulates. It's not unique necessarily, but I think it's strong. It's a strong ending and it's done well. And there's other parts that help, the characters and the voice acting. I mean, that all helps. The setting, the world, it all helps, but it's such a good story to me that I really enjoyed, especially end of Act 2 and Act 3 is really where the excitement is.
Okay, that's fair. I really enjoyed the story, but not because it's weird to say it this way. Not because the story itself was like enthralling or anything like that. I really did enjoy it a lot, but for what really made it for me was the cast of characters and how believable they were, and how, and just the fact that that Jin was struggling with his own morality and whatnot, and because of the way he felt it, I felt it too, and all that. There were some things in the story that I was like, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, I saw that part coming, but there were definitely some surprises here. So for me, the story overall was great. It's a really good time. Would I play through it again? Probably not. But
nope.
It was. But for a one-time through, I really enjoyed it. But speaking of a story being carried by characters, why don't we discuss some? We've already discussed Jin at a decent amount or a decent length, and as well as Lord Shimura. So if we want to start with, say, Ryuzo, how did you feel about Ryuzo, at least initially when you met him, and how his story, if you can call it that, ended?
Sure. So Ryuzo, good character, I think, and I think most of these characters you spend a significant time with are good. But Ryuzo, he started off talking about how hungry he was. Him and his group, his Straw Hat clan, were super hungry. But I really liked the character in the beginning, which is why it was devastating to get betrayed by him. I really enjoyed, that, and then watching him, because he was your longest friend. Childhood friend. Your oldest friend is how he refers to him later in the game, how Jin refers to him. And he really, took time to slowly progress in this character. I don't know if he grew necessarily, but he had an internal fight, just like Jin.
Yes.
Throughout the story, he struggled internally with his decisions and living with them because he knew they weren't necessarily right, but he thought they were necessary. And then just the way it ended, it was really a sad ending for him. What a good character. I thought he's pretty good.
I'm actually kind of happy with. Well, first of all, I liked Ryuzo a lot. I especially liked him and Jin's banter back and forth. With the underlying resentment that Ryuzo does have for Jin because Jin ended up becoming a samurai and Ryuzo didn't. And he really wanted that honor, but unfortunately he didn't get it because Jin beat him in I forgot, it was like a tournament or something like that. They referred to it a few times. But for me, Ryuzo's inner dilemma and whatnot about with his choice and whatnot was very convincing. And especially when he was I thought Kotan-kan was gonna kill him here. When you see it, especially when Kotan-kan is telling, I don't know, I don't remember where they were exactly or where they were trying to get inside of, but he was telling the people of Shimura in this specific town or fort to open the gate, let them in, and we'll do the X, Y, and Z peacefully, but he's bullshitting them. So what he does is he starts torturing people in front of them and wants them to open the gate and will only stop once they do. So he hands the torch over to Ryuzo and tells him to do it. Ryuzo, you burn someone. Testing his loyalty, even though Kotan-kan knows that he's only there because he wants to be able to feed his people. So after burning one person to death, he doesn't have the stomach to do it to someone else, so he just starts shouting at the people behind the wall to open the fucking gate because he can't take it. And I thought that was a very impactful scene to show that he's not pure evil. Because I know other games, other stories would have definitely pointed it out that way, like he made his choice. He's evil. He's joined the dark side. But it's not like that. I've been making a lot of Star Wars comparisons before we started recording because it's just so easy to do. I mean, come on. Star Wars is the same way. You will honor the Jedi by following the Jedi way. I can't. He must stand trial, Mace Windu. I need him. I'm sorry. I'm not going to quote Revenge of the Sith here. But that's my views on Ryuzo. If you have anything else you want to say about Ryuzo, you can, Dion. Otherwise, I'll move on to Yuna, who's a much bigger character.
Yeah, let's talk Yuna.
Okay. So Yuna is the thief. She will call herself that too. She's from Yarikawa, which for a long time has been at odds with the Shimura clan and is indifferent to the Sakai clan because they essentially disconnect. I forget. They had what I would think was essentially a civil war, I believe, between each other, and the Shimura clan came out on top. So Yuna has an underlying hatred for samurai, but to get things done and get them to win the war they need to win, she knows that they need everyone they can get, and her goal essentially is to get off of Shimura Island and head to the mainland, i.e., head to Japan. The main body. But before that, she needs Jin's help to rescue her brother, Taka, who we'll talk about later.
Well, I think we got to talk about them both at the same time.
You think you want to talk about because they're essentially
their story is kind of tied.
You know what? Good point. So, going into the gist of Yuna first. Yuna is she's a very headstrong character, and you can really feel that about her. She does not back down. She has fears. And she is scared of some things, but most things she's not. The only true time you really see her scared is when you do her Tales side quests, because you can ignore those if you want to. I don't recommend it, because if you ignore the Tales and just go through the main campaign as it is, I honestly think it would be a much more shallow story. You won't care about anyone. But if
I can't even see how it would work, honestly.
Yeah,
I'm surprised it's not required. That's how crazy it is.
I think that's why it's required at first in Act 1 for you to, the first mission to get them is part of their tale. so that you're baited into going with them and following that tale. But if someone doesn't care, then I can't see how they would like the story any more than that. Maybe there's someone who does, but I'm not sure. I'm just saying that's my perspective on it. But in a nutshell, this part is going to be a little tricky to talk about because I don't want to just shift to Taka yet, but there comes a point where, screw it, you know what, I'll shift to Taka. You save Taka, who is in Azamo Bay, and he's being held captive by the Mongols and forced to make weapons for them. You save him, he becomes your, unfortunately, temporary blacksmith, because at some point in Act 2, I think it's at the end of Act... Before?
You're going to say it. Don't say it.
What?
Don't say it. Wait, I'm going to stop you. Don't say it.
Okay. I don't know what I was going to say.
Taka, you're going to talk about, his unfortunate end, but...
Yes.
I wanted to, before you talk about his end, we got to talk a little more about Taka. Taka
That's why
has
a
story too, as a character.
Yeah.
Right? So he grows from, this timid, slightly timid. He's not like, he's just timid from fighting. Like, he doesn't want to fight. He's not really into that.
No, he does want to fight. He's been wanting to the whole time, but Yuna keeps holding him back.
Well, he keeps being held back and he won't be able to fight. Yeah, you're right. And Taka wants to, but he can't because Yuna won't let him. And he follows her, so he won't do that, and he operates as a blacksmith. So over the course of this time, though, through the whole, the story, with Yuna I think Yuna doesn't really grow necessarily as a character.
She's pretty static.
The whole thing, she's static until, Taka meets his unfortunate doom, but Taka, he grows throughout the story. He starts off as not being able to fight, and then he slowly... even though he wants to, but then he slowly gets opportunities to engage and be a part of it and be brave. And
he looks up to the ghost. He looks up to Jin a lot.
And Jin really helps mold that because he just gives him these opportunities, you know what I mean?
With the exception of the last time where he's like, you should have left. Or shouldn't have shown up, but, Taka... Some people would say Taka, or in my mind, some people would get frustrated with Taka and be like, he was being a fool. I'd say... he's foolishly brave, but brave more than foolish because he didn't care if he died or not. He wanted to do his part for Tsushima without anyone holding him back. And I'd say, despite how he was killed, he still went out like a boss, in my opinion.
Yeah, he was the boss. I mean, he is the best death of the game. There is no question on that.
And I fucking hate it because I'm like, you bitch, I will gut you.
That is how you make a villain be hated. Oh my goodness, because you grow with him, he really... Taka's a big part of the story, really pushes you, you really like the character. He's so likable.
Yeah.
So, the way...
Should have been the first time, really.
The way he dies is just so sad. Well, let's talk about the big scene, because that's important, I think.
Yes, because I'm going to say this meta-wise. If I didn't catch that footage, we're going to have to describe it here. So, essentially... In this, there's a moment where you have a chance to find. You're looking for Ryuzo. Ryuzo's in a camp somewhere in the area of somewhere in the mid area of the game, the middle land. It's in Act 2, but that main area. He's somewhere there, but to get in there, you need a way to deter the Mongols. Now, of course, in my mind, I'm thinking I can take them all on. Come on, Jin, don't be stupid. But this is a cutscene where things like that don't matter. He can't just jump in there. But
No.
But whatever, little narrative dissonance and all that. But Taka shows up and he's such like, Jin, I'm here to help you. I can distract the Mongols and drag them away from camp. And he's like, you should go back. Because by this point in the game, you had freed Yarikawa village or the town, the city, etc., from the Mongols nearly taking it over, and that essentially wins them their ticket to leave and whatnot. So Yuna at this point is, getting ready to go. She doesn't know Taka left yet. But back with Taka and Jin just essentially says, "Fine, do what you're gonna do, Taka," and he does. He does it successfully, actually. He's able to get their attention and run off, and Jin does find Ryuzo in the camp, but unfortunately, Jin gets knocked out, and when he wakes up, he's tied to a pole, and in front of him, so is Taka, who came back for him when he saw that Jin didn't escape too. And that's when Kotan Khan shows up. And Dion, if you want to take this portion.
And he captures. This is when he captures him, right?
Yeah, they're captured at this point, and
so
yeah, go ahead.
Once they're captured, and I mean, you're probably better at describing this, but once he gets captured, and they're on these poles, as you said, attached to the poles. I mean, this is heart-wrenching almost. Where, gosh, I'm trying to remember exactly how this plays out because it's very important to know.
Kotan Khan essentially was goading Jin on a little bit, despite the fact that Jin obviously wasn't going to budge. He offered Jin a drink from his chalice. Obviously, Jin's not going to take that shit. Then Taka says, I forget what he says. He essentially says, the ghost will not bow to you or something like that. I'm paraphrasing here. That's essentially what he said. And Kotan Khan then says, see, the people believe in you. In fact, and he goes back there, frees Taka, and you see where this is going. If you didn't play the game, you see where this is going. He offers Taka his sword to essentially kill Jin, and once he does, he will let him go. That's a lie, obviously. And if it's not, then it's not worth it, because essentially you're killing Jin, and then what? No one else is a threat. Lord Shimura is a threat. He's just gonna run into people. That's the samurai way. Go out dying if you're going to. But anyway, that's a very rude way for me to put that. But still, but what Taka does is he turns around as he's approaching Jin with the sword. Then Jin kind of mouths to him, don't do it, because he knows Taka's gonna turn around and do what he's gonna do. He turns around and swings on Kotan Khan, and unfortunately, he more or less just bats the weapon away. Not Jin. Taka falls over. He's face down in the mud, and before Taka could tell Jin to tell Yuna whatever he was going to say, I'm assuming I love my sister, I love you, something like that. Then Kotan Khan just stabs him in the back. And as if that's not enough, because I'm not gonna lie, if that was all he did, I was gonna be like, well, that was a quick death. That was surprisingly merciful. Yeah. That was surprisingly merciful of you, I guess. Nope. He then drags the blade across his neck, and you could hear him tearing it off his shoulders. And he just holds it up to Jin.
Oh, it was awful.
I'm like,
guys, it was so bad. It was like, oh my goodness.
And I've played a lot of horror games. I've seen a lot of gore, but that's straight up visceral, man. What the?
Oh, it was so rough. I mean, and you knew how Yuna was gonna react to this. Like it just, all of it just culminated, and you're like, oh, this is just so bad. It doesn't get any worse than this.
I'm also just real quick gonna praise Jin's voice actor real quick, because the way he screams, you feel that in your gut. Like he tries not to let it phase him too much there, but as soon as Kotan Khan leaves, he lets out a gut-wrenching scream, and the only one that rivals that is when you kill Lord Shimura at the end of the game if you choose to. But still,
yeah, I'm gonna leave that one for a secret because I don't know.
It was rough, but
very rough.
This is where we switch back to Yuna.
Say Yuna, so after this, I mean, she's devastated. Let's just be real. She's devastated. Her brother's dead. She's pissed. She's ready to fight. She was trying to leave the island. That was her goal.
Yes, she wanted to leave and start a new life.
Died. It died with Taka. Now there's no leaving. Now it's all about the revenge, all about getting back. We're going to help Ghost take them, fight them, and do anything we can to win. That's pretty much what happens to Yuna. This is her only growth point in this story.
I also think this is the turning point. If before wasn't any clear sign, I think this is also the point where Jin essentially completely accepted his role as the Ghost. Because before that, things were going relatively well and whatnot, at least subjectively well. he had freed his uncle, and they were about to take the next castle. They had a plan in mind and whatnot. But once this happened, Joel, I almost said Joel because how brutal Jin could get sometimes reminds me of Joel. And we talked about The Last of Us. Damn it. Anyway, Jin essentially makes it. I feel like internally he makes that decision there that he's going to just go all in with this, and you can feel that when Yuna essentially says, "We're not leaving my brother here. I want to bury him." And Jin just, without a second guess, is like, "Let's fuck some shit up." He doesn't say that, but that's his face, and you know it's on. Speaking of which,
yeah, after he kills all the straw hats, by the way.
Oh yeah, right.
That's before this already happens. He kills all the straw hats.
Speaking of which, this is a gameplay thing, but after during the Yarikawa battle at the end there, you unlock the ghost stance, and that's the sickest thing. I did that immediately there. The screen goes black and white. You can just one shot people. But
we'll talk about the ghost stance later.
I'm not talking about it as a gameplay thing. I'm talking about it, just emotionally. How that
as a story element.
As a story element. Yeah, that's something I did immediately there. But we can get into more detail about that.
This is where you unlock the ghost stance?
No, you unlock it during the Yarikawa fight.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah, I'm just bringing it up here because it was the first thing I decided to do here, because that's where I was emotionally. I'm just talking about how it felt. Like, as soon as they showed up, I'm like, you're all fucking dead. That's how that moment felt. I felt Yuna's rage. But to sum up Yuna, she's a very interesting character, and I really enjoy her sense of companionship with Jin. But yeah, she doesn't really change all that much up. It's, even with that point, she's still, her goal, all that happens is her goalpost moves, essentially.
Yeah, and her I mean, as a character, her point is to set up a story for you to be a ghost. One, so she inspires that, and to be kind of your traveling companion through a lot of the story. I mean, she's that character, so that's her main story. Let's get through some of these other characters, because we talked about some of these other bigger characters, but there's some smaller, also important main characters in the story. So Masako, I think, was very good. She's a grieving grandmother of the Adachi clan, out looking for revenge for her family's demise. When you meet her, basically her family completely got betrayed, and they all died. All of them died. Every single one of them.
And everyone died.
It reminds me of that Star Wars, you're making so many Star Wars references. It reminds me of that Star Wars reference where she's like, where Anakin killed everyone. He's like, and they're like, and even the children. He killed the children too. This is exactly that. They killed everyone. I mean, they didn't leave anyone alive except for her, which was not on purpose. So you travel with her. Her point throughout the story is you're traveling with her to get revenge, right? She's trying to get revenge. She's trying to find out who killed her family is one, who's killing them, who killed them, who's responsible, and how do I get to them? So that's her whole story. And she, she starts off very revengeful. And as you work through the story with her, she starts, she starts to calm a little bit, but she's a little bit, just a little.
She had one quest where one of her tales was like, she essentially didn't kill the person because they were lovers at one point.
Yes.
But other than that, they all ended in her either killing someone or someone dies and she's just angrier. For
a period of time, and then you get to the main part for her is when you fight her.
Yeah, I thought I was going to kill her there, honestly.
Me too, and that's when it calms her down a little bit. So, I mean, Masako, through her, she's all about revenge. I think she was a decent character. She wasn't the most exciting or the most interesting at all.
She was very one-note, but she was well-written, very well-written, but very one-note.
Yes, and she was very much fun to watch. She didn't know what she was going to do. So she was a lot of fun to watch her do her thing.
I do have a problem with her tales, at least to an extent, because they all start in... Well, you could argue that all the tales kind of have the same rotation, but hers was the most obvious. You try to go talk to someone because she's yelling at them like, "Give me more information about who attacked my clan and this and that." Then you have to talk to them because she's just yelling at them. So you have to talk to them because you're the calm one here, and then you go and try and get to this other person that they give you a lead on. And most of the time, in most of the tales, she just ends up killing them. I am very impressed by Jin's patience with her. I'm sorry, I would have cut her down a while ago. That's me.
I don't blame you.
I would have mercy killed her.
She was. That's the type of character he was. And her whole family died. I mean, that's rough.
I get it. I'm just saying.
And then let's talk about the ending of her story. Jeez, so her sister did it?
Yeah, her sister betrayed her.
I don't even know what to tell you, man. This is bad too. Like, her sister is the one that killed her whole family. And you figure out that her sister, that she thought she was doing a favor for her sister when she sent her away to her family. Even though she loved Masako's husband, she just basically was jealous.
Yeah, it was just jealousy.
She killed her whole family because of her jealousy. And she thought she had sent her away to a good thing, a good husband that would provide, even though in the background he wasn't. And
yeah.
I thought that was just so fitting and such a real, that ending for her was really good. Most of it wasn't as exciting. When you find out it was her sister, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
And you find her sister, you're like, man, this is crazy. I thought that was pretty good and really well done at the end for sure.
Yep. This next character we're about to talk about is the happier one, but also probably the least we could talk about. But his name is Kenji. He's a silly and cowardly merchant, i.e., he gets into a lot of shenanigans. You have to bail him out. Essentially,
yeah.
He's got a good-ish heart, but he doesn't know how to use it. He screws people over, and then when you tell him stop screwing people over, he starts screwing. Then he's like, okay, I will. He's essentially he tries to do good after you tell him after Jin tells him off the first time, but now he's screwing over the bad people, and that's worse.
Exactly. No, he's definitely your
He's great.
Your comedic relief. He's your comedic relief, and he's hilarious. He's always causing issues. He saves you from jail, which is the one useful thing he does. And he gets everyone drunk. I mean, that is his that's what he's selling to these mongrels is, drinks. So Kenji, I think, was interesting, but there's not much to say. His story isn't super interesting. It's just he was something to give you a relaxing character, one that wasn't betrayed, head didn't get cut off, sister didn't kill the whole family. Just keep it a little easier for you. That's he was for. And he's the only one. Him and probably Ishikawa are probably the only ones with relatively easy to handle stories. I should say it that way.
Yeah, it's especially telling when you realize Kenji, while everyone has 9 parts to their tales for the most part, Kenji only has
4?
Kenji has 3, and then he has 1 more. Yeah, so 4 total. He only has 4. And by the way, these tales are blocked off by act, obviously. So you get through tales 1 through 3 for Kenji, and then the 4th one, or the last one, unlocks in Act 2. Everyone else, it's spread out throughout the acts. So,
exactly.
Which is good. It's a very good way to pace it. Because otherwise you would just tunnel their stuff and...
It wouldn't be as impactful.
It wouldn't have been as impactful. Moving along from Kenji, you have Norio, who you meet immediately in Act 2. And, oh boy, he's a very good-hearted person, really warm-hearted, and he's such a bro. But, oh man, you meet him when you, I think you meet him when you retake, not Shimono Castle, the first...
Castle Kamada.
Well, after I don't think it was called Castle Kamada. It
is. It's after you beat Castle Kamada, the first one when you rescue your uncle.
Okay.
It's after that, that's when you beat him.
When you take over it's the first 4. After that, because you take over that one with your uncle because you have to light it, and that's when you guys separate for a bit to do your own.
Oh yeah, there's that little story mission.
Yeah. That's when you meet Norio, who was originally being held captive in a pit with other monks, and all those other warrior monks were dead. And for a time, he thought his brother was, but we'll get into that later.
This guy's story is rough too.
Yeah, at first, what's interesting is his story in a nutshell. He goes through a lot of emotional turmoil, and you can see him going from a very kind-hearted and good person to a guy who's still nice, but is more and more influenced by Jin as the ghost, and is willing to do things that go against his code. At first he's like, I don't kill out of hatred. The Jedi does not swing out of raw emotion. I'm sorry. And eventually, down the line, you see that start shifting the more people he loses along the way. And I'm gonna let you say your bit, Dion, before I say that last bit for Norio.
Yeah, so you gotta think about it. He's like a noble warrior monk. You know, they don't do anything. They don't start fights. They try to be peaceful mostly. Obviously, warrior monks, so they don't attack when they need to. But that's how he's trained. And his main goal is finding his brother. His brother died, but kind of taking over for his brother was his main goal. You know, right? Like, so he wanted to be like his brother. That's who he looked up to originally. But then it became very quickly a revenge for his brother. And I shouldn't say quickly. It's over these 9 missions, which take a while, by the way.
Yeah.
But you slowly transition to like, oh, okay, I'm getting them. I'm getting revenge. And then, the big point happens, which I think I'll let you take it because you wanted to talk about it.
Yep. So essentially, he finds out from another monk after you free this last monk temple that Enjo, his brother, is alive. Barely.
Huge. Who thought that was coming?
But there's a reason why the monk tells Norio not to go inside the temple. He goes inside and realizes that the Mongols had kept him captive, but had cut off all of his limbs. So he's
this is
so he's just
awful.
he's just dying. He's alive long enough to see his brother.
It is awful. It is literally awful seeing all his limbs cut off. It is so sad and gut wrenching.
Yes, and this is rough for Norio because obviously he already thought his brother was dead, and then you see he's alive. Barely, so he's about to lose him again, essentially, at least if you look at it that way, again. And while you can argue, oh, there's some solace, he got to see his brother off, and I think he even says that, but it means nothing to him. He's just, he was able to bury him and whatnot, fine. Well, yeah. But
this was worse.
It was
than
worse.
Him dying the first time.
Yeah, it was worse. It was worse.
Like,
I'm just saying.
Watch him have no legs, no arms, barely making it. This was worse than him dying the first time. It was like, I didn't even think it could be worse. I'm
just saying from the perspective of he didn't even get a chance to say goodbye. If you wanted to look at it there, but again, if you look at it that way, it's still, yes, much worse. Because I think Jin, if I remember correctly, even tries to like look at it from that perspective. And I'm pretty sure Norio comments on it, but by this point, Norio is numb. He's gone. And then his last tail quest, I love how anticlimactic it is. Because you get,
pretty much
you find that Norio's gone, and you hear that he went to go attack the Mongols who were responsible for what happened to his brother and whatnot. And you get there, and I was expecting a fight. Nope. There were people running from the village saying that everyone is dead and Norio is just going crazy. And
he just burned the whole freaking village down.
Yep. And you get there and you talk to him, and you don't fight him because he essentially says, if I had to put it in a nutshell, he essentially says, what's done is done. I don't care. You have my sword, spear, whatever that long weapon he has is called. You have my axe, essentially. And that's it. And he just walks by you, and that's the end of his tale. Like, he's changed.
You missed a little bit. He also says I can't be a warrior monk anymore because after I did this, there's no going back. And Jin tries to convince him to go back to being a warrior monk. So there's that little piece. I forgot I believe he just decides to be something else.
I think he agreed that he should be a guardian, but just not a warrior monk.
Yeah, so that kind of is what happens for him. Very good story, though.
Yes.
Let's hit it off with the worst character, Ishikawa.
He's not the worst. He's the best.
He's the worst character. I hate this. This guy is, oh my.
I mean, he's a dick, but I mean, besides
Let me start this one off.
Go for it.
Let's talk about Mr. Ishikawa.
Okay.
Sensei Ishikawa. Who does not have the right to be a sensei, by the way. We're
going to have a 2-hour video right here. Here we go, boys.
No, we'll make this quick. But,
it's cool.
Ishikawa, you meet him. This guy is just a liar. Oh my God, he's a liar. Anyway, you meet with him. He starts to teach you a little bit about the bow. He talks about how he has a companion or a student actually named Tomoe, who is the main character in this story, in this piece of the story, right? Mm-hmm. And he trained her, and you learn tidbits about Tomoe throughout this experience. He doesn't just tell you who she is. He spends 9 freaking missions not telling you the whole truth, in my opinion.
Yeah, and all he does is like dog her the whole time, and you don't hear her perspective until later.
Well, you hear it a little bit, like, so in the beginning, you know, he talks about how she was stolen. He doesn't tell you that he's the one that attacked her and he was hunting her, but that someone else was hunting her, and she gets away, and that he betrayed her basically, and then every time you find out a little something, Ishikawa has to explain himself to you. So how the story works is it's different than other takes because it's a little bit of a mystery, because every time you're learning more about what actually happened between Ishikawa and Tomoe, because that actually infiltrates or influences your character. And there's like multiple times where Jin just goes off on him, and then he's like, "Oh, okay."
Rightfully so."
Because Ishikawa explains himself, and he's like, "Oh, okay, fine." But I mean, this guy just lies the whole time, in my opinion. But he's a good. I mean, okay, I hate the character, but he's a good character in the sense of
I get what you
how
mean.
well he's played. He's very realistic. You know, you don't want to talk about how you caused the issue, right? So
yeah.
He really, but he teaches you the way of the bow. He talks to you about how Tomoe does this, does that, and how you have to stop her. I have to stop her, and you slowly start realizing why you really need to. And this helps Ishikawa feel like he's growing throughout the experience, right? Because in the beginning, you know, he's like, "Oh, I gotta save her," then, "Oh, I gotta hunt her down," and then you're starting to feel like exactly what he means, but he's starting to slowly, you know, come back to himself as, "Oh, I'm a sensei. Oh, I don't know if I really should be hating her," and that's kind of the process. I mean, he still hates her throughout the whole thing, but he slowly starts.
He wants to straight up kill her, like immediately, like don't even give her a chance to make an excuse, kill her.
Right, and you're fighting against that, and he's winding it back as you go. It's almost like Masako, how she's like, I mean, she's a killer, but he slowly is backing away from that as a sensei. But I mean, God, he just sucks as a liar. I hate him. I mean, I don't know what else to say.
You're a liar, and I hate you.
Is there anything you want to say about him as his progression before we talk about how he, you know, ends with Tomoe? Sorry,
one more time.
Is there anything you want to talk about as him as a character as he progresses, or do you want me to go ahead and talk about the ending of Mr. Ishikawa?
I'm just gonna give my perspective on why I enjoyed him.
Hate him? Oh my gosh!
Because here's the thing: for the reasons you hate him, it's weird because it's like there's the reasons why I like him, because he's the only character in the game, in my opinion, that's him. You know what I mean? Like it's a story that his tale is a tale about hypocrisy, really. Because he oftentimes, because he knows you're the ghost, he knows how Jin is. They all know how Jin is at this point, you know, being the ghost and all, and he will point that out about you, as if he's the one who should be on the, as if he's the one on the high ground, and whatnot. And you know, he says, I've figured out the way of the bow. This is how I am. This is my life, and I will not stoop to such measures as you have, and whatnot, because that's how Tomoe ended up. But Jin understands both sides of things, but he also knows that Tomoe must be stopped and etc. But he's not one to just outright kill someone, ghost or not, just because Sensei says so. He like you said, Jin has his own suspicions. But the reason why I like Ishikawa as a character is because he's willing to challenge Jin, and Jin is willing to challenge him. I think he's the only character that I can really think of that's on the sensei level for Jin, that Jin is willing to fight with. Like, I don't care about your rank, I don't care about XYZ, this is not how we do things. And then essentially he would be like, well, you're one to talk, you're already going against our ways, I'm doing what needs to be done, and so am I. In fact, one of the things that really stuck with me, that I'm not gonna lie, Dion, did almost put me on the train of, oh, now hold up, motherfucker, was this was when you find Tomoe in, I think it was tale 4 or 5, one of the two, when Jin does talk to her, because she didn't immediately kill him. Obviously, she's trying to she tries to talk to him a bit, but before she disappears, quote unquote, she jumps off the cliff and disappears in a pretty typical fashion, as you would. And then he returns to talk to Ishikawa about it, and all Ishikawa is about, why didn't you take the shot? Because she said that you did X, Y, and Z. The sensei, is this true? Did you train? There was someone who was who became a killer at one point that he trained at one point.
Yep.
And he didn't clarify that. In fact, he's like you said, he lies. So he straight up lied about his previous student before Tomoe at one point, but he kind of sidestepped that. I don't know if he sidestepped it there in that moment, but he sidestepped it and essentially told Jin, next time you want to criticize me about whether or not I have the heart to do something like this, you should check yourself first. And I'm like, and in my mind right there and there, I was like, motherfucker, you have no room to talk. You don't. But ultimately, I just really liked that dynamic between him and Jin in that regard, especially with the way that ended. Because I think it was like, I didn't dislike him, but I accepted the fact that I was at odds with him, and that made him more interesting to me. That's where my likes come in. Now, do I think he's like a good person? No. Heck no. I'd argue none of them are.
Yeah, he sucks. He sucks so much. I mean, he's just bad.
But
well, I mean, let's talk about how it ends for him.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, go
Because
for it.
That's important. So, eventually, Tomoe, you kind of go on a mission with her, not knowing it's her, and you talk to her for a little bit, and then Jin kind of just guesses. Oh, it's like, okay, this is Tomoe, and I kind of figured it out. But you find out that it's her, and she begs for your help because she decides to betray the mongrels, and she.
Well, they already betrayed her by then. They betrayed her early on.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. They betrayed her, and so she wants to, I guess I shouldn't say betray, but she wants to fight against them because she wants to escape, which you don't know, by the way. So she enlists you for your support, and she talks about her side. Well, I only did what I needed to survive. I only did what I had to do because I was betrayed by my master. So she kind of talks about her side, which kind of gets you a little bit on her side, and then you go with Ishikawa and you work with Tomoe to be on their team, as they bicker through the whole time, by the way, and they don't trust each other. But you kind of help her fend off some attacks, and she gives you knowledge of a new attack that's going to happen, that's going to kill a lot of people, and you guys tackle that together, and that's what you kind of have no choice but to trust her at that moment. So you go for that final fight. You basically kill everyone, and she uses that time, after helping you, to escape and get on a boat. And she leaves a very good note about how she's given up the life of archery and might go somewhere else. So that was, I think, a cool aspect of that story. It's such a good closing to that.
And Ishikawa could have killed her. In fact, he was going to, but when Jin gave him the letter, he read it and he just essentially let it go. Which I think was a really good way to end it for him, because it's not really a thing of forgiveness. It's more of a, we're both wrong here, so let's just leave it at that. He was wrong for what he did, and she was wrong for essentially going over to the Mongol side to begin with, even if she was just doing it to survive for a bit. They were both wrong, and that's essentially what it came down to. And Ishikawa, to some extent, realized how he was, but he's not exactly apologizing for it.
True. I gave you that. So, I mean, that's kind of how I thought Ishikawa. I mean, I hate him. I mean, I'm not gonna lie to you. It's just this what it is.
Of course, that's fine.
I know you'll like him, and he has good aspects, and he's an interesting character, which is good. The reason we have this hate versus like is because he's a good character in general. So I think all we have to talk about now is the Khan, which I thought was a decent character. He was a good enemy. I think the killing of Taka really poured him through, but he's ruthless. He's like a ruthless enemy, basically.
Yep.
He's a ruthless enemy, and that's how I would phrase him. And he doesn't have too many layers, but he is set up enough to be the perfect enemy.
He's
for
imposing.
this game. Right. He's the perfect enemy for this game because you're the honorable samurai. He's the one that pushes you. I mean, he even says it best himself. No one is dangerous because they have the samurai. They're predictable. I know what they're going to do. But Jin is dangerous because he will do different ways of fighting. And I can't guess what he's going to do, right? So that is what really sells with the Khan as a strong character. I wouldn't say a strong character, but the right character for this type of story. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. Actually, I agree wholeheartedly. He's the kind of character the story needs, and whatnot, because his whole shtick is mind games. Which no one really, I'd argue, are completely ineffective on Jin, but he's essentially trying to get in Jin's head that, oh, you're becoming the very monster that we are. How are we any different, and etc. And you don't really see that, at least explored too much until you do. If you've done, Yuna's quests, which lead into more of that kind of stuff where the Mongols are taunting him and whatnot. But going back to Khotun Khan, I think he's a good antagonist, but okay, I'm essentially saying what you're saying. He's a good antagonist for this game, but if you were to put him anywhere else, he'd be weak. In my opinion.
Yeah, he's just a good setup with all these other strong characters. He's just a good enemy.
He's a good, I don't want to say foil, because I don't think that's the right term for this. But he's the yang to Jin's yin. Essentially. The way they are two sides of the same coin. Like, he's doing whatever it takes to survive, but, he's obviously evil. But Jin is doing whatever it takes to survive, but he's doing it for his people.
Exactly.
That's how that
sums it up perfectly.
Yep.
So I just want to wrap up what we thought of characters and kind of the story and how they kind of affect the story. So the characters, for me, were, and I think it's the same for you. I think we'll speak for both of us when I say the characters were such a strong part of this game. I mean, this is the only game I've played where the characters are the side quests.
Yeah.
And you really learn about the characters. And I think that's such a strong way to do this, that it makes the characters set up as the strongest part of the story. They really are what pulls this story together. Not only the great points of the story, but how you feel about these characters, how you feel about Tak, how you feel about Ryuzu. Those characters really push you throughout the story, and they help you progress your fight against the Khan. And I think that is the main reason this game is so successful. What are your thoughts?
I think the characters are definitely the strongest contributor. As I said earlier, if it is even possible, because I don't know if the game will block you off at this point or not, but you can. Well, you probably could, considering how disconnected a lot of those tales are from the main story, at least in that regard. But if you could skip the tales after having to do the first ones because they're required the first time, then you'd be missing out on a significant portion of the game. In fact, I'd argue that if those tales weren't there and these characters were kind of just around, I don't think Jin could carry the story by himself. He needs
Nope.
Ironically, he would say the same thing just for trying to take back Tsushima. But even as a character, he can't carry it by himself. What makes Jin interesting is how he interacts with everyone else, and those tales are very much required. So if you're going to play this game, play those tales. Please.
Amazing.
Do yourself a favor and play them all. They aren't that long. They flesh everyone out.
Well, look at it.
Well, it depends on how you play it, really. In my opinion, each specific tale mission is not that long. The longer parts of them are the cutscenes that are in them. But that's just my perspective. That's probably based on how you play it. Either way around, the characters are what makes the game great, or at least makes the story fantastic. Because without them, on its own, if they were shallow or just filled in their whatever archetypes they are, then there would be no steam carried for this game.
All right, everyone. That kind of concludes our discussion on story and characters. We thought we really had to spend time and really go into this story. It was just so good that we really want to spend time here. So we're going to actually break this Where We Stand into two parts. This first talk about story and characters, and now in part two we'll talk about setting, gameplay, and then our closing thoughts on the game. So please stay tuned for part 2. We hope to see you guys soon. Goodbye.
Later, all.